Please ensure that all electronic devices are switched to airplane mode for the duration of the flight.
We've all heard that announcement a million times, and most of us have had the exact same thought. Does this actually matter? I mean, half the cabin probably forgets to do it anyway, and we still land safely every single time. So why is it still a rule? Well, it turns out the whole airplane mode thing is totally misunderstood. Your phone is not going to mess with the pilot's navigation and bring down the jet. The real issue is actually a lot more interesting than that. The biggest headache you are causing by leaving your phone on is not happening in the sky. It is happening to the networks miles below you on the ground. And once you see how it works, the whole rule just makes perfect sense. To get why this matters, you just need to know what that little airplane icon actually does. Most of us just treat it like a generic, "please do not yell at me," flight attendant button. But under the hood, it is basically just a kill switch for your cellular radio. See, your phone is incredibly needy. Even sitting in your pocket, it is constantly shouting at local cell towers. "Hey, AT&T, Verizon, are we still connected?" Airplane mode just stops the shouting. It does not brick your phone. You can still watch Netflix or flip Bluetooth back on for your AirPods. It just stops your device from aggressively begging for a signal. Which is totally fine on the ground until you strap that needy phone into a metal tube flying 500 miles an hour. The whole issue starts the moment you leave the ground. Down here, your phone quietly locks onto a nearby tower and just chills out. But as you climb to 35,000 feet and hit 500 miles an hour, it loses that stable connection. And your phone does not just accept defeat, it panics. Because it thinks your reception is just terrible, it starts working way harder in the air than it ever does on the ground. It maxes out its transmission power, screaming at full volume to try and force a connection. It burns through your battery to solve a problem it cannot possibly win. Now you are probably thinking, okay, so it drains my battery, who cares? One phone panicking in my pocket is not going to bring down a commercial jet. And you are right, but aviation deals in scale. Think about a full flight. You have 300 passengers. Factor in the people who also brought along a cellular iPad or a smartwatch, and you are easily looking at 400 active devices packed into one metal tube. If everyone ignores the rule, you do not just have one phone looking for service. You have 400 transmitters trapped in a closed space, all maxing out their power, all screaming for a connection at the exact same time. You cannot hear it, but electronically, the cabin turns into a massive radio traffic jam. You are deliberately flooding that space with pointless radio noise just so your phone can fail to load an Instagram reel. It is terrible signal hygiene. But does all that noise actually put the flight in danger? That brings us to the biggest myth in aviation. We all kind of have this vague idea in our heads that if you leave your cellular signal on, it is going to interfere with the cockpit radios or scramble the navigation. Just some technical mumbo jumbo that nobody really understands, but we all assume makes the plane harder to fly. That is completely false. You could have 1,000 phones on board, all scanning for towers at the exact same time, and the pilots would not even blink. Modern commercial jets are incredibly well shielded. Just think about it. Aircraft manufacturers are not going to bet the lives of 300 people on whether or not you remembered to tap a tiny button on your screen. If your phone could actually take down a jet, they would not let you bring it on board in the first place. So, if the plane is perfectly safe, why do regulators still force you to go offline? This is the part almost everybody gets wrong. The rule is actually there to protect the cell towers on the ground. Most of us imagine cell towers just blast, signal everywhere, like a giant Wi-Fi dome. They do not. Those antennas are carefully angled downward. The entire multi-billion-dollar cellular grid is engineered around one core assumption. The people using it are down on the ground, moving at normal highway speeds. When you take an active phone to 35,000 feet, you completely break that assumption. Up there, your phone has a clear line of sight to dozens of towers across multiple counties. And because you are flying at 500 miles an hour, your phone is pinging all of them at once, rapidly jumping from zone to zone. From the network's perspective, this is a mess. The system on the ground is forced to waste processing power trying to track and route a connection for a device that is moving at aircraft speeds across state lines. Your phone is not just failing to get a signal, it is actively confusing the grid below. And when the network is distracted by hundreds of phones flying overhead, it actually degrades the connection quality for the regular people just trying to use their phones down on the street. Historically, that was the biggest reason regulators stepped in. Airplane mode is not just some outdated aviation ritual to protect the cockpit. It is a firewall. It prevents a sky full of phones from becoming a massive, high-speed headache for the cellular infrastructure down here with us. So, at the end of the day, if you completely ignore the flight attendant, what actually happens? Well, as we just learned, the plane is not going down. But honestly, you are mostly just playing yourself. Even if you do not care about signal hygiene or cellular grid engineering, leaving your phone on during a flight is basically volunteering to kill your own battery. While you are sitting there reading a magazine, your phone is running a marathon you did not ask it to run. It is cranking its antenna to maximum power, desperately chasing connections it cannot hold, and chewing through your battery for absolutely zero reward. Then you land, pull out your phone to order an Uber, and realize you are staring at 12%. Airplane mode is not a safety panic button. It is just a stop doing dumb things button. It tells your device to relax, stop screaming at the ground, and save its energy for the stuff you actually care about. And real quick, speaking of landing, there is always that one person who switches their phone back on the exact millisecond the wheels hit the runway. Technically, they are not breaking any rules. Once the plane is on the tarmac, the whole network confusion issue is over. But honestly, you should still wait. Taxiing to the gate is actually a highly sensitive phase of the flight. The crew is highly focused, and if there is a sudden stop or an emergency announcement, they need you paying attention, not completely distracted by a flood of WhatsApp notifications. Just wait for the flight attendant to jump on the intercom and give the official, "You may now use your electronic devices." Most of the time, they will clear you to turn off airplane mode while you are still rolling to the gate anyway. So the next time you hear that ding before takeoff, you know exactly what is going on. You are not saving the plane, you are just saving the grid and your battery. Real quick, before we wrap up, some of you might be thinking, hold on, if cell phones do not crash planes, what was that massive freakout a couple of years ago about 5G networks canceling flights? That is a fair question, but here is the catch. That drama had absolutely nothing to do with the phone inside your pocket. The 5G issue was entirely about the giant cell towers down on the ground. Telecom companies were firing up powerful new 5G frequencies that sat uncomfortably close to the ones used by aircraft radar altimeters, the sensors planes rely on to figure out exactly how far they are from the runway when landing in heavy fog. So that panic was not about 100 passengers forgetting to turn on airplane mode. It was just $1 billion turf war between the FAA and telecom companies over invisible radio real estate outside the plane. So leaving the 5G drama aside, I am curious. Before watching this, did you think airplane mode was about protecting the plane, or did you already know it was about the towers on the ground? Let me know in the comments, hit like if you learned something new today, make sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.